Welcome back to Talking Golf with Ann Liguori, and congratulations to Nelly Corda, who won her third major title, a wire-to-wire win at the Chevron Championship, the first major of the season. The win moved her back to the top of the Rolex Women's World Golf Rankings for the first time since August of 2025. And joining me now to talk about the impact of Nelly Corda's win is Grant Boone. He is one of the most respected voices in golf. He is the play-by-play host for LPGA tournaments on Golf Channel, sports broadcaster for NBC, CBS, ESPN. Grant, you do it all. Welcome back to Talking Golf.
What you need to add to there is friend of Ann Liguori. That's up there at the very top.
You're very kind. It's always a pleasure to connect with you. And boy, what a win for Nelly Corda, wire to wire, Grant Boone.
Yeah, it was amazing to watch. And I go back to the very first hole on Thursday. This is the first major. And of course, a lot of your listeners will remember this event, so many do, as the Dinah Shore that started back in the California desert, Rancho Mirage in 1972. And it evolved for 50 years there, became really the home of women's golf in a lot of ways. It was their masters. Then Chevron came in, based in Houston, pumped a ton of new money into it. They've tripled the purse, but part of that means they want to have it in their backyard. So they bring it to Houston. 3 years at one venue called the Club at Carlton Woods. Nelly won there, 2024. Then they moved it here to Memorial Park, which is where the PGA Tour plays its Houston Open. So no one really knew the golf course on the women's side of things. And here comes Nelly. She had a win, which was a little strange. You'll recall it was back in Orlando when it was literally sub-freezing, below 32 degrees for the whole weekend there in the mornings, and barely got into to maybe even 40 on those couple of days on the weekend. They canceled the final round. It was weird. It was unfortunate. And I think some people, Annie, may have thrown a little shade that hit Nelly. They really were saying, why didn't the LPGA play on Monday? And some of that shrapnel may have hit Nelly Corda like, well, hey, it was only a 54-hole win. She didn't control any of that. She shot 64 in that third round, which is unbelievable. And then she comes here after 3 second-place finishes. And so you say, okay, Nelly's number 2 in the world, but she looks kind of like number 1, and she looked like it all week. Very first hole, makes about a 5-footer for par. Off she went, bogey-free, 65, led by at least 2 after every round. And you know this, it's every single player in golf on any level would love to have a huge lead. It means they're playing great. It means they've got a little bit of wiggle room. And yet, what do we see? We've seen it with Rory. We've seen it with just about everybody. Big leads are hard to play with. Why is that? Players tell me because only one result is now acceptable. I have to win.
That's right.
If I don't win, I've screwed up. Well, Nelly was impervious to all of that. She led by 6 going into the weekend. She led by 5 after round 3. She won it by 5. She looked like a dominant player in the world, which she is. And now, as you noted earlier, she's back to number 1 in the Rolex rankings. You don't remember Scotty at the PGA last year? He goes out at Quail Hollow, and you thought that's the best player in the world going out, taking this tournament kind of, around the neck and saying, I'm not letting go no matter what happens. That's what Nelly did.
Well, a lot of pros, Grant, will say they don't want to be really in the lead by that much going into the final round. Padraig Harrington likes to be behind maybe by 1 or 2 shots. A lot of people think that pressure is just insurmountable. But Nelly was able to deal with that. She's really dealt with a lot. When you talk about the criticism after she won, the Hilton Grand Vacations Tournament of Champions in January, because it was shortened to 54 holes because of that incredible cold we've had in the Orlando area, early in the year. And there were reverberations about that she had to deal with. And then she was winless last year after having that incredible season in 2024. these athletes have to deal with so much criticism these days with all the social media and all the ways that people can verbalize, criticism. But I tell you what, she has really shown a lot of mental fortitude, and along with an incredible golf game, she's so
Yeah.
beautiful to watch. But mentally, Grant, what she's had to deal with, everybody wants her to win. She's
Yeah.
kind of like the face of the LPGA tour here in the
There's no
United
question.
States, right?
There's
So she's
no
really
question.
had a lot of layers that she's had to deal with.
There is no question. And I do think that if you want to compete on this level in any sport, and I think you've talked to probably the best athletes and coaches in every sport, every halfway popular sport on the planet. You've heard this from them. It's part of the job. There's one way to have no one talk about you, and that's either not go pro or not be very good. We don't talk about most players the way we talk about Rory or Scotty or Jordan Spieth. When's he going to find his game again? Guess what? That means he had a game that we all wanted to see. I think the best players know, even though they don't like it, they know it's part of the equation. If you're going to play at the highest level, by the way, she won $2 million. It was a $9 million purse. That's part of the equation. If you're going to be on this level, you've got to deal with that. That's why she talks about her bubble. She's saying that's the term she uses. I'm staying inside with my team. It's a very tight circle. So think about her parents, Peter Korda, Regina. Peter won the Australian Open in 1998 tennis. Regina played tennis in the Olympics for Czechia, Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia back then. Sebi Korda, terrific, one of the best American tennis players going right now. Jessica Korda, her older sister, six-time LPGA Tour winner. She's got the same caddy she's had for all 10 years on tour. She's got the same trainer, same coach, David Whalen, who was her coach when she started playing the game. So, Andy, I think that is her antidote to that sickness that may try to sneak in, or that virus that may try to creep in of criticism. Stay in the bubble, stay protected, don't listen to the outside noise. You do what you want to do. And I think she's also talked about, to your point, about the winless season last year. By the way, her scoring average last year, lower than
Wow.
when she won 7 times in 2024. It wasn't as if she played poorly. She made every cut multiple times in contention. And she just said, I have had to learn to forgive myself a little bit. These great players, the best really in any field, sports or not, they're often their own worst critics.
Sure. They're so hard on themselves.
I think so. Yeah.
So, talking about that team, who all jumped in the pond with her after
Yeah.
she won to celebrate? And may I say, her cannonball was a perfect 10 if I'm going to judge
I
style
mean,
points.
did you, in the words of our friend, my colleague Dan Hicks, expect anything different? Of course, she's just put on this virtuoso performance. She's going to nail the cannonball. She's a Florida kid. She gets it. She knows what it's like to nail the cannonball. She had her caddy Jason McDeed. She had her trainer Kim. She had her agent Chris Mulhop. She had her sister Jessica. Her nephew Grayson.
Right.
She's Auntie Nellie. She says, and for folks who remember the Dinah, Poppy's Pond, Amy Alcott,
Right.
whom you've known for years. Amy jumped into the pond, first one to do it in 88. When Dinah Shore passed in 94, February of 94, Donna Andrews thought, let's revive that tradition to honor Dinah. Well, then pretty much everybody after that jumped into the pond. Well, they moved to Houston. The first course they were for 3 years had water by 18. So they put a little deck out there and players jumped in when they won. They didn't have water at this course. Memorial Park doesn't have water on 18. So the Chevron folks said, talking to a lot of the players, the current players are like, what do we do if we win? They built this makeshift. I mean, it was all according to it was nice. It was not big, but it was big enough for
Sure.
5 people to jump in, plus a little Grayson. Um, and it got a little bit of blowback on social when some people saw it. They thought it looked a little rinky dink or whatever. And I said, this is Chevron, who's done nothing rinky dink since they got the sponsorship of this event. They keep pumping resources, charity dollars, purse increases, and they listen to the players. They kind of, speaking of shutting out the noise, they were I applaud them for risking the ridicule, as I said, of the drive-by critics, people who don't really matter, people who don't care, just people who are going to fire off some angry tweet. They listened to the players, and the players said, I don't want to be the one winner who doesn't get to jump, because next year they're actually, Tom Doak is going to put water in.
I read that.
So next year it won't be an issue. But think about this, Annie. You and I were just at the Masters, and that one event has probably a dozen traditions that you don't have to think of. You just green jacket,
That's right.
white overalls for the caddy, or. The women's game doesn't have many traditions. And when you think about the leap into Poppy's Pond, you can like it or not like it or think whatever you think, but it is the single most enduring tradition in women's golf. And I just think Chevron took their own leap of faith and said, "We're going to do this thing. We're going to do it, and we're gonna do it for the players." And when you saw Nelly go full cannonball and the look on her face, you thought she nailed the cannonball. They got it right too. Good for
I
Chevron.
love that. And good, yeah, good for Chevron. I know the purse increased since they took
Wow.
over as title sponsor. This year it was 9 million, up from 7.9 million.
It was
Nelly,
3.1 when they took over 4 years ago.
right,
3.1. Now it's 9.
9 million. And Nelly earned 1.35 for the win, up from 1.2 mil last year. I mean, everything about it seems first class. And I remember the criticism when they actually moved the
Oh yeah.
championship
Yeah.
from Mission Hills in California, which we all love that
Oh yeah.
venue, right? And Amy Alcott starting, the plunge into the pond back,
Yeah.
as you mentioned, in 1988. We weren't sure if that tradition would even continue, right?
Yeah.
But to
Sure.
see it now, and to know that Tom Doak is going to redesign the 18th green
Yeah.
and end the pond, I think is very important. And talk about the venue, because I understand Memorial Park, it's a municipal
It is.
course, and yet so many people came. The
Yeah.
spectators were of the younger demo too, I understand.
Yeah. Yeah. Memorial Park, if you're a Houston resident, Monday through Thursday, so we're doing this on a Tuesday, you could play for $30.
I love that.
$30. Now, getting a tee time could be tough because
Sure.
word is out. The Houston Open's been there. The men's Houston Open's been there since 2020. So they've got a little bit of tradition. It used to host the Houston Open back in the day, back in the 50s and 60s. Our dear beloved Judy Rankin won the only other LPGA event ever held there. It was in 1972. She beat Kathy Whitworth, eagle the last hole, then eagle the playoff hole to beat Whit. And it had that little bit of LPGA history as well. Redesigned in 2019. Houston, it's hard, where you live, Annie, in so for so much of the year in New York and where you've been. It's hard to explain how sprawling Houston is to someone who lives in the Northeast, for
Sure.
example. It's just endless miles of freeway and interstate and asphalt and massive buildings, which you understand in the Northeast, but it's so spread out. So the first 3 years in Houston at this event, it was in the Woodlands, which is a
Right.
northwesternish suburb. Huge. It's had the Insperity PGA Tour Champions event. The PGA Tour used to have its tournament at the TPC at the Woodlands. But it is a haul. And with Houston traffic, it's insane. This is actually inside what they call the loop in Houston. So Interstate 10 to the north, Interstate 610 to the just to the west, and it's in this gorgeous conservancy. Not going to compare it to Central Park, but it's a beautiful green space, golf course redesigned right in the heart of Houston, 5 miles from downtown, from
Right.
the Chevron offices. It's the Chevron folks told us this last week while we were down there that they want this to be the new Mission Hills. They want it to be the 50-year home. And I hope it is because the women's game deserves more tradition.
And it sounds like the access to
Yeah,
the golf course is much better, and obviously
much.
that showed with the spectators and the number of people who came out. Grant, talk a little bit about the LPGA overall under the new commissioner,
Yeah.
Craig Kessler, because media
Mhm.
rights values have increased, global sponsors are on the rise, viewership is up, and it sounds like, he really is, he and his team are doing a great job in what they have to do to push the LPGA into greater relevance.
Yeah, Craig took over. In fact, he's coming up on the 1 year anniversary of the announcement that he was going to be the new
That's right.
commissioner of the LPGA Tour. He had been with the PGA of America as their COO. He had been at Top Golf before that and some other ventures. He is nothing if not energetic. He is winsome. He listens to you carefully when you talk to him. You know how when you talk to certain people, Annie, and you can tell that they're scanning the room as they talk to you. They may be nodding and acting like they're listening, but not really.
Sure.
And Craig will lock in on you, uh, and I think he's really made a nice connection with the players. When we had the incident, I say incident, when they had the situation in Orlando, it in a way was a bit of a wake up call to Craig, and he fully owned ways in which they didn't quite stick that landing, so to speak, with how they handled every decision.
Yes, he did come out right away and admitted it. He made some mistakes there.
And so, what do you say when it comes to a leader? There are some who say a leader never owns a mistake. Those aren't my favorite kind of leaders. Give me one who says, "Here's what we did. Here's there's a PR element to all of this. How do we present this? But bigger picture, let's drill down internally. Where did we go wrong? How do we make this better in every area? Sponsorship, attendance, administration. How do we run the tour? How do we deal with the players in ways in which they feel valued? How do we get our schedule organized in such a way that maybe we're not going on two different Asian swings, which the LPGA does? Asia's critically important to the LPGA. Some may not know this, but 15 years ago, the LPGA was, I'm not saying it was in danger of going away completely, but it had dwindled to just about 20, 22 tournaments. And because of the rise of players from Korea, Sae Pak really ushered in that Korean wave back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Players from China began to come over, Thailand, and all of a sudden the LPGA, way more than the PGA Tour, became a global tour. And great players, countries began investing in women's golf even more than men's golf. And that's why I think you've seen so many more players from other parts of the world have success on the
Sure.
LPGA Tour compared to the PGA Tour. Asia, the tournaments began cropping up in Asia, not cropping up, the LPGA created them. And they became critically important to the strength, rebuilding a robust schedule on the LPGA Tour. So you need tournaments in Asia with so much of your tour being from there. But to leave in February is a great time for the LPGA, should be. You're kind of not yet to March Madness. You're past the Super Bowl. Baseball hasn't started. Hockey, NFL, and basketball, you know, kind of in their second halves of their season. That ought to be a great time. The PGA Tour has what? Pebble Beach, and they've got some other good tournaments in February. That ought to be a good time. LPGA goes to Asia, then they go back to Asia in the fall.
Hmm.
And so he's trying to get a schedule that's a little more streamlined so that we're not going back and forth cross country all around the world.
Right.
All the
That's so important, Grant. And Nellie didn't, she took 6 weeks off, right?
She
After
did.
she won
She
the
did.
tournament champion. She didn't go to Asia for that swing,
Correct.
which, look, it's a lot of traveling. It's a lot of traveling when you
Yeah.
can, so
That's
that
that's
hopefully
really
that might change schedule wise. Maybe, if you're saying that the commissioner is really trying to work on making it more favorable for the
yeah.
players. I mean,
Yeah.
I know the Asian swing does really well over in Asia, but a lot of I
It's
would
overnight
think,
here.
yes, it's
It's
tough.
overnight in the
It's
US.
very
And
tough.
if put it this way, so 2 years ago, Lydia Ko wins the first event of the season, the Hilton Grand Vacations Tournament of Champions. She then loses in a playoff to Nelly. That was the first of Nelly's 7 wins. Then the tour goes to Asia. And Lydia played in the final group in China. And had she won that event, that would have qualified her for the LPGA Hall of Fame. And it would have happened at 2 in the morning US time.
Right.
And that's not wrong, but it's not ideal either for a tour that's based in the US. Uh, as it turns out, it worked out almost poetically and beautifully. She got her last point at the Olympics. She got the gold medal, and that put her into the LPGA Hall of Fame, the final point. But yes, you can go to Asia, but let's make sure it flows, the schedule flows. To your point about Nelly, I think we're gonna I think we're gonna look at that as being important. Look back on that as I think we can look now as it being very important. Nellie's had some injuries through the years. After she won 4 times plus the gold medal in 2021, she had a blood clot in 2022, knocked her out for the spring of 2022. 2023, she had a little bit of a back tweak that knocked her out for a couple of months. She is, again, parents are tennis stars. They get it. And they're like, look, you go to Asia, nothing wrong with going to Asia, but let's lock in on the biggest events that you want to win. And those are the major championships. And nothing against Singapore or Thailand or the other events over there. Let's lock in. So she stays home. She works out. She gets her stuff done here, comes back. She finished second in Phoenix, second in LA, second in Phoenix, second in Vegas. And she gets and second in San Francisco. So 3 straight second place finishes. And then she takes 2 weeks off. She normally plays the LA event, which is the week before Chevron. And she said, I would get in on a red eye. I would be rushing to get to Houston. I'm going to take LA off this year. And we saw what happened. She was full flight, fully ready, and she just dominated.
And this season, how can it not be promising for Nelly Korda?
Yeah.
She's freer. They say, Rory McIlroy is
Yeah.
freed up. And, it's kind of similarly in a different context. Nelly seems to be totally in control
Yeah.
of her emotions and, as you say, in the bubble, and her game is on. And boy, she could have another incredible season like 2024.
I really think she could. And Annie, let me just give you a little comp here to Rory. When Rory won last year at the Masters, you could have looked at it 2 ways. This is going to presage his greatest year ever. But I think it wouldn't have been unrealistic to say it's going to be hard for Rory to get back up for a regular event after what he just did.
Sure.
And what we
Which
saw from Rory,
it was really kind of immediately after he won the
that's what I
Masters in,
mean. That's what I mean.
2025.
That's what I mean. And that's not surprising. He's a human being. He just had the biggest win of his life. And he didn't play his best in those few weeks after. He played certainly well as the year went on. I think with Nelly, the difference is, yes, she was really focusing on this week. She wanted this one, and she's gearing up for all. By the way, we're going to Riviera for the U.S. Women's Open. First time ever out in L.A. Hazeltine, KPMG Women's PGA. Evian in France is always the same course, and she's played well there before. And then Lytham in St. Anne's, where they've just announced the
Outstanding.
men's open is going to go back to in a couple of years. So the majors right now for Nelly, by the way, she's got 17 career wins. She's got 22 Hall of Fame points. And maybe for people who don't follow the LPGA, they may not remember or know they have a points based Hall of Fame. You win 27 points and you're into the Hall of Fame. You get 1 point for a regular season win, 2 points for a major. You get a point for Player of the Year, point for the Ver Trophy, which is their low scoring average, and you get a point if you win a gold medal in the Olympics. So Nelly has 22 points towards the Hall. Annie, if I told you, like I don't, you can go to one of these betting sites. I don't know if you can find this right now. If I'm taking, yes or no that Nelly will get to 27 points by the end of this year, I'm saying yes. It's still going to be
Take the
hard.
bet.
Winning's hard. Winning's hard. Winning's just, I don't care who you are. Nelly found out. She's second 3 times.
That's right.
Winning's hard. But everything lines up. To your point, everything lines up for another banner year. It's never easy. Even the year she won 7 times, by the way. Here's a weird one. 7 times you think she cruised. In that summer, she shot 80 at the U.S.
That's
Women's
right.
Open.
I remember
She
that.
made a 12 on the third hole of the Open or a 10. A 10 on the 12th hole. And she missed the cut at the KPMG Women's PGA Championship. She got bitten by a dog. I mean, I'm telling you, it was a
Right.
weird summer.
Unbelievable.
Then she comes back and she wins again at the end of the year. So we can sit here on our Zoom call and say, oh, Nelly's going to win a 7, 8, 9 times, go in the Hall of Fame. It's never quite that easy. Weird stuff
Never
happens.
easy.
Dogs have teeth, and you never know what's going to happen.
Life goes on, and
Life
golf is
goes
the
on.
toughest. Golf is the toughest sport
It
on the
is.
planet for sure, for so many reasons. Grant Boone, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to catch up. Love your insight. Love your passion in supporting the women's game. It's
I'm the
so
lucky one.
important to come not only from women, but from guys like yourself who are just, you are relentlessly passionate about the women's game and the
Thank you.
LPGA tour. And
Thank you.
we appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Annie. I love this tour. I've been doing it since 2000, and I'm the lucky one that I get to be out here and tell these great stories from players from everywhere.
Grant Boone. And tell your darling uncle, Pat, I send my love.
91 years young. You'll find him on Instagram.
I love him, Pat Boone. Anyway, Grant, thank you so much. Always enjoy it.
Okay, Annie.